Hello there, and welcome to another video on my channel. My name is Toch, and on this channel, I make content about my experience throughout the software development industry. And today I bring you episode 2 of what I'm calling pair programming. Pretty much, I invite a guest who is either a professional or an up-and-coming, could be a student in the software development industry. We work on an application together, and we have great conversations. And my guest today is a longtime friend of mine. We've went to the same school. We've interned and worked at the same company for quite some time, Microsoft. And he is Isaiah Duncan. Thank you for joining us, Isaiah.
Hi, everybody. My name is Isaiah Duncan. I'm currently a software engineer at Microsoft, and I'm a graduate of the University of Maryland, College Park, spring 2021. So some things I like to do are going to the gym, and I really love writing poetry and also playing piano, even though I barely even have the time. But yeah, that's a couple of things about me.
You gonna show us that shirt?
The infamous, I've only worn this shirt. This is my first time wearing this shirt, honestly. But I've had this for quite a long time.
Awesome. Definitely looks good.
Thank you.
Okay, so thank you so much for taking the time to join me today, Isaiah. So today, as you know, this is the second installment of this pair programming thing, and I'm still figuring out the idea of what I want this to be like. Like at first I was thinking I'd invite a guest and we would build an app from scratch every single time. After the first one, I noticed that, and the first one was me and Mufaro, I noticed that we didn't actually get through as much as we wanted to. So I figured instead of, building a new app, we can add new features to an existing app so that over the course of the entire series, we can have like a cool app as the byproduct of it. So I just sent you a link. We're going to be using VS Code's live share feature. That way you should be able to hop in and start editing code along with me. So I'll give you a second to set that up on your end.
Yep.
Whew, so it took us a minute, but we finally got the live share session to work. I'm not sure what or why was going on, but that was a whole trip, to say the least. Amen to that. Okay, so now down to what we're going to be doing today. So like I said earlier, rather than build a whole new app, we're just going to add features to the one we already built. So right now, as of last episode, me and the last guest, we were able to build the basic chat interface, UI, etc., etc. My goal for this episode is to be able to build a login page and integrate authentication into the application. So cool. How much do you have much experience dealing with authentication and login and all that kind of stuff?
I'm an expert, you know what I'm saying? Just today alone, I looked up about 3 videos on how to do authentication with Firebase. So hopefully I'll be good at it.
So that's all you need, just 3 videos, That's all you need.
The whole series, man. I like, it was double speed, so, I was learning 2 times as quick. Good work today.
Oh, Lord. That's hilarious. Okay, let me start this on the iOS simulator. It'll take a second. Why does it keep launching iPad? I don't want it to launch iPad. I want it to, let me move this over to this screen so it doesn't block you. Okay, run on iOS simulator. See, we're already running into issues, and this is like par for the course when doing stuff like this. It's always one thing or the other. So while I'm dealing with this issue, waiting for this thing to do. So why don't you tell us a bit about what your experience has been starting full-time at Microsoft so far?
Man, it is not for the faint of heart. I feel like you start off and you're like, or you're not even start off. You're waiting to graduate. And you're like, I can't wait for this to be over. I can't wait for this mess to be over. So I can start at Microsoft and it's gonna be chill from there on out.
Yeah.
That is not exactly the case.
Yeah.
It takes a little bit before it's like still when you start working. You have to like onboard and you have to read up on any documentation that you can find in your team and understand the technology, figure out how you can contribute to it. you know, get some open source technologies thrown at you, and you know, and like, you know, and then after all that, you get your first commit, or not your first commit, you get your first pull request. And then, you know, that's a struggle, and then the next one's a, you know, a little bit of a struggle, but little by little, you build up to a point where you're kind of just smooth in a flow zone, I guess. I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet.
How many weeks have you been working full time so far?
I'm definitely reaching there.
I think there's a bit of a lag.
I started on June 14th.
June 14th, you said?
It's been at least 8 weeks.
Okay.
Man, I don't even know. It's been at least like 5 paychecks though.
You're not counting the weeks, you're counting the paychecks, my man.
Right. Trying to buy the paychecks. Each way.
Yeah, but it doesn't make any sense. You said 8 weeks in the 5. How does that work? It's bi-week. You get paid bi-weekly, right? So that's at most four paychecks, right? Unless then that means this must be like then it has to be like 10 weeks or something, you know?
Okay, so I started June 14th. So the first paycheck June 30th.
Yeah.
July 15th, July 30th.
Yeah.
August 13th, because they paid me 2 days earlier that week.
Right. Same here. Right before my internship ended. Yeah.
So that's 4, and I guess the next one is gonna be in 2 days. So almost 5 paychecks, 2 months and like 2.5 months. What's today's date? Yeah, 2.5 months.
Yeah, I think the reason they paid us earlier that month must have been because it was on the 13th was a Friday, so the 15th would have been a Sunday, right? So they can't pay us on a Sunday, I think.
Oh, really?
And then it was a Friday. That's my theory. Maybe, I don't know. There wasn't a holiday that Monday, right? I doubt it.
I don't think so. Yeah. Nah, it definitely wasn't. There was no holiday, because I remember that weekend was the weekend where yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, so we're still having this strange issue where, you know, it keeps launching iPad instead of the iPhone simulator. So let's use developers' #1 favorite tool, and let's just Google it and see what happens. Okay, specify.
I can't spell. You might have to say it here. Specify emulator type on React Native Expo. Line coding is hard. I know it's hard. I want to say it's always hard. I bet you would not be typing this slowly. Yeah, exactly. Oh lord. Okay, let's see. Yada. Yeah, this is not what we're looking for. Let's try here. How to run Expo React Native app on an emulator. Nope, this is all Android stuff. Android virtual device. Nope. Specify. Let's say iOS emulator on React Native Expo. Xcode install. No. Let's see. So we're already here.
Okay, so after a couple minutes of searching, we finally found a solution, and you know, it's good old Stack Overflow. Stack Overflow is great for everything, always comes in handy. So apparently we have to run Shift-I while we're running the Expo shell command. Okay, so I'm going to do npm start. It's going to run Expo start, and it's going to launch this thing. Let me switch back here. And then I'm going to do Shift-I, and it should ask us what emulator we want to use. There we go. This is what we like to see. And I'm going to just choose the iPhone 12. Keep it simple. Okay, so it should take a minute.
That's the most expensive iPhone.
We're just emulating it, you know, we're not actually buying it. Oh, Lord. Imagine, like, if you can, like, emulate it and, like, this is actually an iPhone and you can do all the things that you can do with an iPhone. Then, you know, everybody just buy a MacBook and there's no point in, you know, ever buying an iPhone again.
Right.
Okay, cool. So here. No, go ahead.
That's just like you can pop it up the screen, like.
Right. Okay, yeah. Here we go. So this is pretty much the status of the application as of the point the last episode that we did. Okay, so now we're gonna add authentication. We're gonna add authentication using Firebase, and let's do the first thing. Let's be responsible developers, and let's go to the documentation. Firebase authentication. Have you ever worked with Firebase before?
Yeah, a couple of times. The first time was during my first internship.
Yeah.
My mentor challenged me to make a chat app.
Okay. And, so close to home then. Yeah,
Yeah.
you should be an expert in this department then. I expect big things from you now, Isaiah.
And then the second time, actually in my iOS class,
Okay.
I actually think it like we did authentication. No. I don't think it was authentication. I think we did
Yeah.
like the database part of an
Okay.
app on Firebase. That was
Yeah.
it.
Okay. Cool. Cool. Yeah. Firebase also offers database and stuff. And you took this class in at UMD, University of Maryland.
Yeah. So the class was called Handheld Systems, but like
Mhm.
they do iOS semesters and they do Android semesters. And I have a MacBook, so you know which one I took.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Makes sense. But yeah, so then some of this stuff should be familiar. So this is Firebase. So we pretty much already have Firebase set up in the application. I won't show the config just because I don't want people to steal my information and run up a bill. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna first off create the foundation for the login page. So this being React Native, which just pretty much uses the React framework, I'm gonna go ahead and just make a new component. So I'm gonna call it, and like I was telling my last guest Mufaro, I have a very specific naming convention that I like to adhere to when I'm building React apps. So whereby you can just look at any of the components, because in React every single thing is a component. And it doesn't really enforce a certain structure on you. So I try to enforce that structure myself, because I find that in most applications having structure is really important, especially when it comes to scale and like working on large teams and stuff like that, you know. Like for example, I'm sure at your team at Microsoft you have like a bunch of rules in terms of like structure, best practices, design patterns, etc., stuff like that.
We have yes, and it's all in like the continuous integration system, and it's like if you push and and your code doesn't look how they want it to look, you will get errors and you will not be able to merge, and it'll just be very annoying.
Yeah. Well, one thing I definitely don't miss is like, you know how when you submit your PR or whatever to like the build system, the CI build system, and then it runs those pipeline tests, and it's just like the first time you push, it's like everything red, everything fail, everything X, and then you just got to keep doing it, keep fixing this, fixing that, read through the error messages and all that.
Yo, it's the worst for me. It takes like 2 minutes to for the CI thing to go through, and it's like it's doing other things other than like checking the code, but like that doesn't happen first. It's like, so you gotta wait 2 minutes to check the code. Sometimes I figured out a quicker way to do it, but that's how I was doing it at first, and I'm like, every time.
Yeah, it took me a minute to realize you can run a lot of that stuff locally, like without having to push it to ADO.
Exactly.
So yeah, I'm not sure if we're allowed to, like, ADO is publicly available, right? So I can say that without, you know, getting getting arrested by the Microsoft police.
Yeah, right. Yeah, the legal police,
right?
The litigation police.
HR, hello, Coach, what's going on? What are you saying?
It's like I just got a message from HR. Are you on the call with Coach right now?
Yeah, clean out your desk by Thursday.
Right.
Okay, so we've got the login container. So pretty much what a container is what I like to think of it as the business logic layer of a React application. This is where I put all the state and like handle all the side effects and stuff, and then pages, they just handle the visual side of things, and then having a brain fart now. And then components are like the little tidbits of everything else, like the buttons, headers, stuff like that. Even though in React everything is component, but semantically I like to make those divisions to make it easier to follow things. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to the login page. I'm just going to put some random message like a text component, and then say hello login. Save that. Make sure to import the text. Save that. And then I'm going to go to the main page, and I'm going to comment stuff for now. At some point in the future, we're going to add navigation. Maybe that'll be another video with another guest. For now, I'm just going to comment out the chat so we can just solely focus on the login page. Comment this out as well. And here we go, hello logging. So some of this stuff might be, since you mentioned you've done Swift in the past, and I'm assuming, or at least I'm hoping you worked with Swift UI, or did you use a different way to create the user interfaces?
It was not UI. UI, I think that was like kind of new.
Yeah, it's relatively new. Yeah.
Even in that semester. So like he kind of like, it was one lecture like later in the semester, or midway through the semester, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
No, actually pretty late in the semester. But like he like, you know, showed us a couple of things in Swift UI, and it was just like, you know, in the lecture. He didn't really make us do anything with it. But like, so throughout the whole semester we were just like doing it the normal way. I don't really know what you would call it, but you know.
Like, so typically, I'm not sure what you were doing, but typically frameworks like this in Swift UI and Flutter, they allow for declarative user interface building, right? So it's like well, this one at least has this XML-like syntax, pretty much, where you just, you know, you describe what you want the view to look like, or the thing to look like, and then you have like a layer of state, and whenever the state changes, you can change the view UI. So it's like declarative, because you're like, okay, you can do things like, okay, like for example, I have an if statement. Oh, if this, you know, show this, else this, or whatever. And when that state changes, then it'll conditionally, it'll re-render itself based on the new state. And that's why it's declarative, and that's also why it's reactive. That's where it gets its name from, React. But yeah, so we have the login page. So the first thing I think we should do, let's go ahead and add a header, right? And so because we don't want to keep repeating or writing the same code over and over again, what we will do, well, let's see if it's worth it first. So this is the header component, right? So just because I don't want to have to, one thing when you're writing React, or at least when I try to do, I try to write code to be as reusable as possible. So I'm going to create our own header component, right? New folder. Actually, I'm gonna make it a widget, which is another thing that I like to do, where it's like, if we're looking at the hierarchy of React components, the container is at the top. After the container is a page. After a page is components. After components is widgets, right? And so they pretty much just represent different layers of responsibility, as well as like scope of like what they do, which I think that's redundant, what I just said, but you get the idea. So for example, a header, a page header would be a widget, and let me call it app header. That way we don't have any namespace collisions with components that are already defined in the UI library we're using. App header.tsx RNF. Okay, app header. Then I'm gonna paste that code that I copied here. I'm gonna import it. So the reason you can as you can see, the reason I added the app extension is just so that, you know, because this name and this name would have been the same otherwise, and to avoid that collision. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go back to the login page, and then I'm going to, no, the chat page rather, and then I'm going to add our app header. Oop. And as you can see, that's already less code than what was here before. And then I'll go to the login page, and I'll also add the app header. Cool. Ooh, error. Something is wrong. I made a boo-boo. What happened? What is this saying? You likely forgot to export your component from its file that it's defined in. Okay. Well, that's not the case, because it's... Oh, I just forgot to save that file. Okay, cool. Now this looks disgusting. This definitely is not what we want this to look like. So let's do this instead. I think I know what the issue is. If you go here, so it's this style, it makes everything center. So I'm just gonna get rid of that and just have it be flex. There we go, much better. So we have our login page, and we have a global header. So one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to override the default text here with props, and say title equals empty by default, and then set that here. I did something wrong. There we go. Okay, fixed. And then I'll go to the login page, and I'll say title equals login. I'll go to the chat page, and I'll say title equals chat room. And now we should see this as login. Cool. So why don't you tell us a bit more about your team, what it does, where you fit in that, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. So my team, pretty cool team. So basically, you know what Azure is. I hope.
For the people who are watching who may not know, can you briefly touch on what Azure is?
So Azure is a Microsoft service, or not. It's like it offers you a whole bunch of services. So if you go to portal.azure.com, you can like see everything that Microsoft offers. It ranges from servers to VMs to databases to server orchestrators or VM orchestrators, like everything you could imagine. It's all on Azure if you're trying to develop things. So basically, what's most important to my team is VMs on Azure. So there are many different types of VMs, different VM sizes, different purposes for the different VMs, and also different operating systems that you can put onto the VM. And what we do basically is test all of that. So like our team creates software that tests the VMs on Azure. So basically, let's say we have a VM that's like a regular, I think it's a D type VM is like the regular. And we want to put like a Linux operating system. So let's say Ubuntu, whatever. And so like we'll like create the VM. What our software will do, it'll basically automatically create the VM, and like run a bunch of different tests that we wrote on the VM, and basically tell us if there's something wrong with the kernel of the VM, or if there's something wrong with the operating system or something. If there's any problems, it'll pretty much air it all out. So it's
kind of like running maintenance on the system, just making sure that, the platform upon which people, because I'm assuming people are running their code on these VMs or, using it to run applications and stuff. So you're pretty much just making sure that, the environment is safe and, running maintenance on it. Is that an accurate description?
I wouldn't say exactly like that. It's more like we're not like running our software on VMs that are like on customer VMs. More like we're creating VMs of our own, and like we're not gonna like create it for like forever. We'll create it for like however long the test lasts. But like we'll like create a VM that's similar or exactly the same as what the customer has. And we'll run tests on that. If we can find problems on that, we can know what the problems are on the customer's VM. And that's what's really important.
Okay, so just see if I understand that correctly. So you're not running those tests on the customer instances, right? But you're creating your own instances using those same images, right? So it's almost like you're duplicating the environment that a customer would use, and you're just like making sure that there's nothing wrong with it, et cetera, et cetera.
But like, yeah, exactly. But the thing is, we have like so many images. Like our testing has so much. It's so vast. Like there are different types of VMs, first of all, and then like there are different types of operating systems. So like multiply those two, and then so many other things that are variables in this. So like there are a lot of different tests, and there are a lot of different types of machines that we have to run the tests on. That's pretty much what my team does. The software is called Lisa. It's actually open source. It stands for Linux Integration Systems Automation, I believe.
Glad you didn't mess that up.
I memorized it like first day. I was like, yeah, I gotta memorize it. Yeah, but so it basically tests the Linux kernels and like the Linux operating systems on the Azure VMs, because Linux is the most used operating system in Azure. Or Linux isn't an operating system, but Linux-based operating systems are most used.
Okay, awesome. Sounds neat. And I know like you've talked about the connection between your team and the work you do and the open source community. Can you talk a bit more in that? Is it more so just centered around Linux itself, because Linux in general is like a large tool in the open source community, or is there more layers
So my
there?
team's connection to the open source community is pretty much me. So last year as an intern, I was put on this project called Kernel CI, and it basically kind of does some of what our software does, or what it does. And it's like, it basically tests the Linux kernel, but the thing is, you have to like get your Linux kernel to be tested by the system. So you know, it's not like testing everything; it's like a specific thing. But basically, there are many different tests for the Linux kernel on kernel CI, totally separate from my team's work. And basically, what we are trying to do is get our tests onto kernel CI, so that we can have more, get our tests and our machines tested by kernel CI, basically, so that we can have more. What's the word for it? Basically, so we can have more visibility of problems within our VMs.
Okay.
Long story short.
Okay, gotcha. Makes sense. Yeah. Makes sense. Okay, cool. So let's head back to this app a bit. I think it's feeling a bit lonely. It's a bit empty. Let's give it some life. Cool. So the first thing we should do. So the first thing we're gonna do is, I don't know. Should we do email and password, or should we do Google login? I think email and password is probably easier. Let's do that. So let's grab an input element. What is it called in React Native Elements? I think it's just called input, I believe. I hope so. Yeah. Okay, so that would be for the email, and this would be for the password. Let's just look and see that they're both there. Cool. What is this? Go away. Bye-bye. So let's add.
Why do we do 2 input elements instead of one for like both of them?
That'd be kind of strange, like, because usually, like, you have email in one box and password in the other box. If you had to put like email and password in the same box, that might be slightly weird. Know what I'm saying? Yeah, I've just never seen that. I don't think there's like a single app that has something like that.
That puts them together.
Yeah.
Just making sure you're on the same page.
You're testing me. You're trying to keep me on my toes. I'm like, why is he asking this strange question? Like, what? Well, hold on. Let me just plug my laptop in so it doesn't die. Hopefully I can do this without disconnecting my recording system, because one of the downsides of these new MacBooks is like you have to use dongles in order to connect multiple stuff to it. So sometimes if I make the wrong move, like during my when I was recording the first episode with Mufaro, I made the wrong move, did something, disconnected it, and like that whole section we were recording just was gone. So that was very salty. To say the least. Okay, there we go. So we have our email input box where we can type stuff, and our password input box. So let's also add a button to submit. Yeah. React Native Elements as well. Not there. Sometimes I hate how the auto importer does some weird stuff. Button, and I think TI title equals, and we'll just call this, oh, we don't have to do that way, MIT, I can't spell, submit. Okay, cool. So one thing I want to do, because I want to add a sense of like a global styling. I don't like how everything is like so wide, the button is so wide, the input box is so wide. I'm gonna create another widget, and I'm gonna call it new folder app page, and I'm gonna go here, new file app page.tsx rnf. Let's do that, and then I'm just gonna say flex is 1, padding horizontal is going to be 16 is usually good from my experience. And then we'll just pass in children, and then we'll just render that here.
Right.
Cool.
And so what is this doing, this piece of code?
Yeah, so I'm pretty much just creating like think of it like a parent component. So you know how XML or syntax language or whatever, they have like open bracket, close bracket, right? So this is going to be a component like that, whereby anything that I put in between the open and close bracket is going to get rendered here, right? So in React, that's called children. There's a specific prop for that. So now I'm going to go into the login page, for example, and instead of using view here,
right,
I'm going to make that app page, right? And you should see, yeah. There we go. But now it's doing this weird thing where it's squishing the nav bar as well. So I'm going to go a step further, because technically every page should have its own header, or could have its own header. So I'm going to move the logic for the header into the app page itself. In here and in here. I'm going to import that. And then I'm going to say... header title. I hope I spelled that right. Then I'm gonna say header title. So this way, I no longer need to manually specify a header. I can go here, header title. Ooh, what was that?
Well, I was moving my bad. I was moving my computer forward.
Gotcha. It's all good. I thought you were, I don't know, like shaving ice or something is what it sounded like on my end. Okay, cool.
Shaving ice.
No, continue. Follow that through. Speaking of shaving ice, what? I want to hear what the follow through is.
It is very hot today. It is very hot today, and I'm not gonna lie,
it is.
I have some popsicles in the freezer, and they are waiting for me. I'm not saying why they're waiting for me, because pause, but they're waiting for me. Right?
Oh geez, that was a good follow through. I wasn't expecting that one. Okay, cool. So now we've got the padding that we want, and we've also got the header in the right spot. I don't like how this is so high up. I want to put it a bit lower, so I'm going to wrap it in another view component. All of this stuff. And I'm going to do style flex1. That's just going to make it take the whole vertical space, and then align items, I believe, center. That did not work. Okay, let's try something else.
Question for you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because I know in Java, if you like have a piece of code,
yeah,
and you like highlight it, and you put a bracket, like hit a bracket to type it, it'll like put the brackets around the code instead of like erasing the code. Will the same thing happen in this if you try to put a tag?
I'm sorry, I was a bit confused by what I was trying to fix. What I was doing. I'm sorry. Repeat that one more time. What's happening here?
All right. So, for example, Java. This happens in like a lot of languages. I've seen it, but like, basically, you're able to highlight a piece of code, and then like, you know, the code is highlighted, and then you type a bracket or like a parentheses or something like that, and
it puts it on either end. I'm not I'm not so sure that's a function of languages as much as it is like the IDE you're using. I think it might be more so the IDE, although I could be wrong. Okay, there we go.
It actually probably is the IDE now that you mentioned that. I'm kind of curious.
Oops, somebody got a text message.
Wait, my bad. I'm sorry.
No, it's all good.
I don't know how to mute that.
Oh, Lord. Okay, so now we have the basic UI set up. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to set up pretty much a basic form system, and then add the Firebase Authentication module and go from there. So right now we're having this error. That's just because we need to finish setting up the form schema. Or not, schema is the wrong word to use. I know you ever like, you know, when you're like trying to think of things and then you just start using words that don't even make any sense. Like I just said schema to describe something that has nothing to do.
Every day of my life, bro. Every day of my life. You gotta like, just put a filler there and just come back and fix it, man. Like,
exactly.
It's a constant struggle with all of us.
Amen to that. Amen to that. Okay, so cool. So we're gonna set up data for the form, and so this library. It's pretty cool. It's a React library called Formic, and it just lets you. It provides a bunch of useful utilities for dealing with forms on the both on the data level and on the user interface level as well. So I think this should be initial value.
So we have email. Yeah, it's on the correct way. Always gotta check. And password. Make those empty strings, and then it takes a callback for the submit. Cool. And so now we can pass in the email data to the login page. And actually, this would be, well, let me destructure this. Equals formic.values. So email, password.
Cool. I spelled email wrong in there.
I'm dead. Yeah, we still in school, man.
I remember there was one internship that I did. This was like in the fall of 2020. I was working for another startup company, and like when I tell you the amount of spelling errors I made in that job, I'm surprised they didn't fire me like at some point. Like I think it was the CEO or something. He told me, he was like, he knows my commit messages. Like he doesn't even have to like see the name of the person. Like as soon as he just reads a message that has a typo in it or something, like he knows it's me.
it's like on the first couple of times you see the typo. Yo, who did this? Who wrote this? It's like everybody in the room. Who wrote this? Touch it quiet. Start looking down.
Oh Lord, that's hilarious.
Right. So this bit of code right here is taking care of the create account. I'm assuming, correct?
Yeah. Well, more specifically, it's taking care of the form, getting the form data. So how it should work is, I'm creating like think of it like the variables where the email and password will be stored in, right?
Right.
And then once the submit button is clicked, it's gonna trigger this callback right here, which I'm gonna try and console log. Right here. And so it's here we're gonna call the thing that's gonna actually create the user. So I need one more callback for the submit. HA and ELE submit, and I didn't spell submit right. SUBMIT.
G Stokes.
Hey man, at least I'm consistent,
I thought you took English, man. I thought you took English.
It must have been Spanish or French or something. Must have walked in the wrong class. Oh Lord. Okay. Handle. Submit. And one thing I love about VS Code is like it must be using like AI or something to do this, but like how it gives you the suggestions and stuff. I really love that.
Oh, it suggests names for you?
Not suggesting names, but like if it knows that I've typed a name, right? And if I go to a different file and I start typing that same name, it'll automatically give it to you to autocomplete,
Oh, yeah, that's actually one of my favorite things.
Yeah, I swear. VS Code, I've been, even long before I ever worked at Microsoft, VS Code has been my favorite IDE for a very long time. IDE, text editor, same difference. Sometimes like it blurs the line between an IDE and a text editor at this point.
I'm guilty as well with this.
Okay, so there's still something that I'm doing wrong here. It's saying that onChange is not a function. Why are you saying that? It has to be something with the way I'm passing this in.
What am I doing wrong here? Let's live debugging. Let's see. So this takes an event, right? The callback takes an event. React change event void. Let me see. Does that mean that on change? Why is this name handle change right here? That's what the library calls the function for handling change. I'm embarrassing myself now. I'm supposed to be able to know what the heck is going on here. Let's see. P, and then let's do E. Okay, so we're passing in this callback this way. The issue should still be there. Eek. Okay, this one is intense.
Well, you know what? It may be there might have been so many errors that it got frozen on one. So I'm just gonna go ahead and restart the server, hoping that that's the issue. Pretty much, I'm blaming the server and not me. It's not my fault. It's the server's fault. npm start. Okay, have it start over. Let's go here. There's two. It wasn't me.
It wasn't me. It wasn't me.
Oh Lord. Okay, let's see. Ooh, and now it's telling.
Unchange is not a function in onchange email. Onchange is undefined. Now that should not be the case because I'm clearly passing a function. Wait, what component is that? It's saying onchange email. Email. Yeah. That's the file. That's the one that you were looking at earlier. Yeah. So it should be the login page right here. Yeah. Oh. Yeah. Wait. Do I know what the issue is? Hold on. Let me see. Onchange email. Okay. Let's try something out. Let's do some debugging. So that log data. Okay. And okay. This is something completely different. Interesting. And then let's get rid of this one here.
Now I'm starting to get nervous. Like, oh, they're gonna oh, told you can't code. Oh, get out of here. Go home. I'm sweating. This is. Hold on. What is this?
My favorite part of coding is
is when anything and everything just goes wrong and you
goes wrong all at once and you can't figure out
what's what. Okay, let's see. Dismiss.
Like, where's this stemming from? They're showing me 15 different lines of code. What?
Reload.
Dismiss. Now this is unresponsive. Yada yada yada. Okay, let's restart the server one more time. Exactly. I'm sticking to my story. Let's get rid of this one because that's the old one. Let's get you back on the screen. And let's do a. You know what? Let's close this out. Is this one? Some other apps I'm building. Let's do Shift I again. And let's run it on the iPhone 12. Okay. And restart. Hopefully, third time's the charm. Fingers crossed. Let's see. Oh, there we go. So I'm not sure what that was. Yeah, let me pull the debug code right quick. Do you still have the console.log in there? Yeah, I do. Which is why I'm pulling this up, so that we'll be able to see the
console. Let me minimize. This is the one thing I don't like about my new laptop is that it's 13 inches. I'm coming from... Get your mind out of the gutter. I'm coming...
Hey, bro.
I'm
coming. I didn't even see anything. My mind wasn't in the gutter, bro. My mind wasn't in there. That's the thing, bro. I'm thinking, man.
Bro, I know you. Your mind.
The short man hates a big laptop. And that's all I was saying, bro. That's all I was thinking.
Bro, no, I know you, man. You're forgetting I know you. Your mind was definitely in that gutter. You just meant I said it before you did.
Yo, he wanted figures before I did, so now I got in the gutter. Now I'm in the gutter. If I had said he's gonna get a 15 seconds before, I would be okay.
Oh, Lord have mercy. Okay. Password. Cool. What is the meaning of this? No, somebody call the cops. This is
a function still.
Yes. Somebody call the police. This is BS.
So we're exporting it, or are we exporting it? Doesn't it need to be like an export keyword in there somewhere?
No. We're passing it through as props, right? So it's coming in here, and because it's a curried function, it's pretty much a function that returns a function, right? So the first call is going to take this email, store that in its closure, and then return a function. It's going to store that in the closure of the function that gets returned, which is expecting the text value, right? So this should certainly be like literally. Hold on. Console.log on change, and it should be capital C, not lowercase c. Console log that. Let's check the console here. Undefined. That's interesting. That's very interesting. This may be the root of our issue. Let me see. The changed. Let's see. Undefined. This is the root of our issue. So now, this is very strange. Why is it registering this as undefined? How many places am I? App page CSX. Ah, this is the root of our issue.
Hold up. Amen.
This is the source.
Just because I'm on the page.
Oh, you were on this page? What are you doing here, Isaiah? No, it's like, no. This is I wrote this code here. This is my. So this shouldn't be the page. This should be the container, right? So pretty much we were, or I was, just rendering the wrong thing at the root level. This entire time we were busting our brains trying to figure it out, and that was it. That simple issue. And if you go back here, everything should be Gucci and peaches and rainbows. Okay, let's try this now. John.mail, whatever. Cool. And password is, what am I doing? Password is whatever. Cool. Now it works perfectly fine. So there you have it, kids. Make sure you render the right components in the right spots. Otherwise, you're gonna. How long did we spend trying to figure it? At least like 10 minutes or something. Yeah. 20. Got me sweating and everything. Jesus Christ. Anyways, moving on. Cool. So editing, you know, cutting it all out.
The magic.
Okay. So let's do one more thing. Let's make it like a regular password input box, and I think it should be secure
text entry, and it's a boolean, and we're gonna say true there. That way, there we go. It blocks it, and you don't see the value. Cool. And then, yeah, I think we should be good to go. So now, whenever I press submit, we should see the data in the console. Let's go to the bottom. Ooh, we're seeing a lot of this. Let's get rid of that. Let's go back to the container, and let's. Okay, so yeah, here it's that. And oh, there we go. The data object. So we see the email and we see the password. So pretty much what we're gonna do next is we're gonna take that information and we're gonna log it to Firebase, and we're gonna use that to handle creating a user, etc., etc.
Okay, so now it's time for us to jump into the actual guts of the authentication. So really quickly, I added a library that I typically use. It's a very small library. I wouldn't even call it a library. It's just a module that I typically use to abstract a bunch of the Firebase, what's the word now? Implementation details. I'm kind of tired. You know, that long stint of errors kind of knocked the wind out of me.
Yeah. Both of us are beat down from that error.
Oh Lord. Speaking of, what's the can you share a bit about the experiences you've had dealing with errors in your role so far at Microsoft? Have they been this bad or worse?
Oh man, sometimes I feel like my errors. I feel like it's not been this bad. Not really. Except for like when I'm doing something on an open source software that my team is like trying to utilize. But like when I'm working with that, it's errors every time I like run a lot of code. Like literally, you can't live without errors if you're using that software. But usually when I'm like writing my own code and like everything like that for the team, it's usually more like the errors are coming from the CI system. So like, you know, the checking of the code and is my code looking right? Is it like exactly 88 characters long and no more? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
that's kind of like the errors I tend to get.
Yeah.
But a lot of, speaking of errors, like that's another important thing or part of my job. So like a lot of the time, or every so often, I kind of have to run a bunch of tests on our VMs, you know, use our system that we created and analyze the errors that are happening in the VMs. So like, you know, basically get to the root of it, figure out what's wrong with the VM and why that test was not passed.
Yeah.
And basically that's like a pretty important part of my role in this team right now. Sometimes it's pretty tedious though, because like, you know, it's like, it can be a lot of errors. It can be like 40 at a time. But like, I don't have to do it all like in one day, but it can be a lot of errors. But I tend to spend some time like figuring out what is the root of them. So like, how did this fail? Why? And, you know, kind of make a report for that so that my team and whoever else looks at the report can move forward and fixing that. But yeah.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Yeah, so it sounds like there's a lot more structure in there. And then like the things you do, like, yeah, it's a lot more structured. It's a lot more, okay, here's exactly what you do, how you react when you face errors, et cetera, versus like, you know, just like Wild Wild West free range type stuff.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Okay.
But it's like those errors, they can actually be, sometimes they can even be trickier. This one right here was like a simple one-line thing. Sometimes the error could be like with the operating system, something that's like incompatible, or it could be really anything. I feel like you lucked out. I guess the time that it took to figure it out was a lot less, but or a lot more, I guess. But the difficulty in finding it sometimes can be a lot worse.
And sometimes the solution itself can be a lot worse, because like if it's a if it was like if the issue was in like a place where it's like at the architectural level, like, you know, the design of the system, there's like a huge flaw or something, right? Then the solution may involve an entire re-architecturing, you know, doing scrapping that way and doing things a whole nother way, which is, you know, definitely not optimal. Nobody would want to do that from the get-go.
Luckily I haven't come across anything like that yet. Let's hope I don't. You know what I'm saying, while I'm on the team.
Hopefully we didn't just jinx it. Oh Lord.
Yeah.
Speaking of, how high would you say you want to rise up, like, throughout your career? Like, where do you see yourself? Let's do where do you see yourself in 3 years, 5 years, and 10 years?
Man, 3 years, dude. One thing about me is, like, I really want to move to Japan. So, like, you know, or like overseas.
I didn't know that, actually.
You know? Yeah. Like, hopefully by then I'll like be there. But like 3 years, I would say I would definitely. The thing about like leaving Microsoft, or like the thought of leaving Microsoft, which is like scary to me. Why would I ever? But like, you can kind of get more money, and like, you know, and that's like a thing. Even though they pay us well enough, but you know, it's kind of like a. If that matters to you, then you can get more money by moving around companies. So like, let's assume that I'm like sticking with Microsoft for 3 years. Hopefully I can, like, by that time move up a couple of levels. You know, hopefully, like, you know, just grow in my role of what I'm doing. So maybe from you know, analyzing tests, move to creating more tests, or like, you know, making the existing tests go deeper. You know, if I'm still on this team, I would say probably that in 3 years. 5 years, that's tough. I don't know. In 5 years, I would say I would want to, like, hopefully, I can't really say senior, but like, you know, approaching that level, like a senior software engineer type level.
I think 5 years might be a good enough time to be a senior engineer. I believe so.
Oh, well, in that case,
or I mean, I could be very wrong, right? But I think, you know, somebody who's moderately ambitious enough and goal oriented enough can definitely do it in 5 years, I think. Is that? Yeah, I think so. I could be wrong.
Like, being a software engineer, you get paid really well in general, like, as a software engineer. So like, the money thing isn't really super.
Oh, speak for yourself. The money thing ain't super. Speak for yourself, man. Who are you talking to?
Because like, everybody who's a software engineer, you're getting paid well, like, you know, for wherever you live. And like, so the money thing is like, you know, anybody can use my money for whatever reason, but like, you know, you're totally fine. As a software engineer, you're like good.
Except if you're living in San Francisco. Like, there's like horror stories of like some software engineers living out their cars, or like living in trailer parks, just because, you know, the cost of living there is insane. Speaking of trailer parks, that's gonna be me now. You're referencing. I'm actually thinking about, you know, buying a trailer, like, if wherever I do work full time, and just living there, which is part of the reason why I ask you 5 years, because I'm thinking, right, I'm thinking like at the point when I turn 30, that would be like the next big shift in my life, right? So this is the first big shift. You know, we're graduating, getting our full-time jobs, right? I'm thinking 30 would be another big shift, right? So I'm thinking, okay, I'm 23 now, so between now and 30, I've got what, 7 years? Did I do that math correctly? Yeah, I think I did that math correctly, right? So between that time, you know, based on, you know, just assuming whichever company I work for, wink, wink, nod, nod, based on what I'm going to get paid at that company, right? If I, rather than stay at an apartment for that duration of time, I did the math. I did the math for like more like 5 years, not 20 years. But I think the difference in savings is like a whole 60K, bro, you can do a lot with 60K. Because like another thing for me is like at an early stage of my career, I don't necessarily want to, because I know one of our friends, Mufaro, he suggested like, okay, you can put a down payment on a mortgage or something, right? But I feel like with a mortgage, it's kind of like ties you to wherever you buy the house in. I mean, surely, obviously, you can buy, let's say, you can buy a house somewhere else and not live there. But like if you're not living in the property that you own, you know, trying to maintain it over a distance may be difficult. It may cost you more money.
That and whatever rent
exactly whatever rent you're paying and where you're staying at if you do it elsewhere. Otherwise you'd have to do it where you are, then you're tied to that place, right? Because you own that property. So for that reason, that's not a very attractive option for me, which is why, you know, I'm thinking a good option could be, you know, buy you a nice little trailer, you know, one of those big travel trailers, you know, have like a little 2 rooms. It's got a, you know, a small kitchen, you know, it's got a shower in there. I mean, what more can you need? You know, get some Wi-Fi, you know?
That man, even that, because like let's say you buy that in like, you know, you buy that in Seattle and then you get a job on the East Coast, like now you got to drive that all the way to the East.
I mean, driving is easier than moving, right? Like if you, let's attack the scenario of switching jobs, right? Yeah. Just driving the trailer is a lot easier than like, you know, worrying about leases, worrying about, you know, a U-Haul. You basically live in a U-Haul, right? You know, and all that stuff. So moving is very, and you know, if we're talking like statistically speaking, like the average, you know, new employees in our situation, we switch companies a lot, you know, in our age group and stuff like that, which is why in my mind, like 30 is my, like, as soon as, like, in my mind, when I hit 30, that's when, okay, I need to start thinking about settling down. I need to start thinking about, you know, find a place that I want to spend either the rest of, or at least, you know, maybe decades of my life in, you know, thinking about, you know, finding, you know, the woman, you know, getting the wife, the picket fence, hopefully before 30, you know, ladies, I'm single, ladies, I'm single anyways. But yeah, you know, just that's like I'm in my mind, that's like a point where I'm shifting my focus in life to like settling down, that type of stuff, right? So, but between now and then, you know, I'm moving around, you know, I gotta get a taste of everything that's out there, you know. And so with the trailer, you know, like let's say, you know, I have let's hypothetically speaking, let's say I'm working at Facebook or something, you know, and then, you know, I leave there, go to Microsoft, or leave there, go to Amazon, you know, I just gotta drive my little trailer around. That's it. You know?
Or hopefully, hopefully, if you like go from Facebook to Microsoft to Amazon to Google, you'll like still be in Seattle the whole time. That would be an awesome option too.
True. That would be a decent option. But I don't know, maybe I'll go to Texas or Tesla or something, you know. Things happen, you know. But yeah, I'm strong. I mean, I'm not sold on the idea just yet, but like at a guaranteed savings of at least 60K is a huge incentive to do that. So, but we'll see how things go. Because like 60K is literally a whole year's salary for some occupations.
For a lot of people, yeah.
Yeah, so that is not insignificant at all, you know.
Depending where you live, for some software engineers, that's your whole salary.
Exactly.
Near it. So like, oh man, I could.
I mean, it's like the only thing negative about it is like, you know, it might be a bit embarrassing, you know, you might not get as much clout as you would have otherwise, but you know, who needs clout anyways, you know? What is clout for?
That's the clout. That's all the clout and all that. My thing is, I feel like I kind of want like space. Just living in
get a bigger trailer, you know?
Yeah, that's not like a lot of space, honestly. And also the idea, you know, the security isn't there. I feel like other than that, you're like. Good.
I mean, you're not gonna be parking in the hood, like.
Of course, you're not gonna go. Have a doorman. You don't have a doorman. You don't have. Like,
you want a doorman? That's where are you trying to live at, bro? I'm gonna visit your house then. You got a doorman in there? I'm coming to visit.
You know, that's something I hope when I move. I hope I get a doorman. You know?
That's how you know you made it in life, guys. Just get a doorman.
You got a doorman. Hey, how you doing? I said, you know, you walking out. You know, you don't get the level of security necessarily. There are always going to be ups and downs. I feel like the biggest thing is like, you know, for me, I don't know, just like trailer park environment. I can't like.
I mean, you don't have to live in a trailer park. You know, you can find. I'm sure you can find some place to park at that's not, you know, the stereotypical trailer park that people think of. You know.
Right. My imagination is just like. Has so many negative ideas. Like, why would I want to live in a trailer? Like that's kind of like, you know, I have so many like, it doesn't sound like a good idea. It's just scary to me, man.
I mean, it's not for everybody, you know. It's not for the faint of heart, you know.
Yeah, it's not for the faint of heart. Yeah, right. All right, back to the code.
So I noticed while we were talking, I realized we made, or I made a bit of a miscalculation, but it's nothing too big. It's something that I can probably fix on my own in between episodes. For now, it's fine. So this is a login page, but we first have to create a user before we can log in. So we should have started with the sign up page. But I'm just going to use this as the login page or as the sign up page, even though it says login. But like I said, I'll fix that later. So pretty much we're just getting the submit data, the email and password that the user entered. And then we're calling the auth service to create a user with the email and password. So one thing we're going to do just to get a good visual of this working is we're going to listen for the authentication status of the current user. So I'm going to set up, I'm feeling very paranoid right now that we're not recording. I don't know why. Sometimes I just get thoughts like that and I have to follow them through because I'm paranoid like that. So let me just make sure that we're recording. We are recording. Cool. Now I feel so much better.
I know that feeling, bro.
Okay, so then we're also
that's like the software engineers that are like all software engineers. When you make a change in the file, you like hit save. You hit Control S like 15 times.
Yeah, to make sure.
Before you like move on, like
yeah. Okay. So this is kind of like what I was talking about earlier with the reactive. So I've just defined like a piece of state right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to conditionally, that's the word, conditionally render either the chat container or the login container, depending on whether or not the user is defined. So I'm going to say not user, right? Which is JavaScript's way of converting an object, getting its truthy or falsy value. So if the user corresponds, and I'm just pairing that with a ternary operator, if the user corresponds to true, which means he's defined, or she, it can be he or she, there's no gender here. Why? Okay, I need to uncomment chat container. Cool. So if the user is defined, it'll if it's actually, this should be the opposite. If the user is defined, it should show the chat container. If the user is not defined, it should show the login container.
Cool. I kind of wish they had like a way to switch contents, like so you don't have to copy and paste it under.
Oh yeah. I think there is an easier way. I think a coworker of mine taught me this, but I may have forgotten it. I think it's option. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, right here. On Windows, I think it's Alt arrow keys. On Mac, it's Option arrow keys, and then it just, you can move stuff up without copying and pasting. But okay. And so what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna use the auth service to listen for the authentication status. So auth status dot. Is this a function? Does it take a callback? It does. Okay, so it returns a user, and then I'm gonna say if user and else. And so if the user is defined, I'm gonna set the user in the state to the user here.
If the user is not defined, that's a problem.
Not necessarily. It just means that the user is not logged in. I'm gonna make this any just to cheat. Yeah.
And the if.
Yeah, you're right. Good catch. And here, so if the user is not defined, then null, that way, because null is going to have a falsy value. So that way it's going to show the login container. So we're here.
Oh, one more thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
Before you run it. Hold on, I'm waiting for your screen to update. Okay, so on line 12, does there need to be an underscore there too?
No. So these are two different scopes of user. So this user only exists in the scope of this callback here.
Gotcha.
And then this one exists globally in the scope of this app component here. So the app component, think of it like it's the root component, the parent component of every component in the entire application. So technically this user this user variable or piece of state would run throughout the lifetime of the application. Cool. So now if we've done our job correctly, and if not, I blame you. when I when I do this, it should switch to the chat component. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Is that Edge that I'm looking at right now?
Oh yeah, this is Edge. Like I think when I got there we go, it worked. So when I got this computer, this new MacBook, I decided to make Edge my default browser. One, because I've spent 2 summers working on it, so I feel like I might as well. If I don't use it, then why should anybody else? And 2, because it's pretty damn cool. It's you still, because it's Chromium based, you still get that Chrome vibe, but it's a whole lot, in my opinion, more efficient, and it doesn't take as much resources as Chrome does. So as of this point, it's my default browser, and I don't think I'll ever go back.
I'm trying to figure out why are you not in the vertical tabs though? That's the problem right here.
Hey man, you gotta take change one at a time. You can't change the whole browser. You gotta.
Vertical tabs are the best part, bro. Come on.
How do you turn it on? This is it. Is this it? Or how do you turn on? We'll figure it out later. So let me log into our Firebase project. Let's go authentication. And there we go. The user we just created, John at mail, created August 28th. That's today's date. And this is not from the future. This is from 2020 because I've had this project for a long time. So that's 2020, 2021. People might have thought that, 29th and 28th, But anyways, okay, yeah. So this user is created. So let's just let's console log the user just so we can see what that looks like.
That is a crazy coincidence, though.
Right. Okay, so we can see some of the details, the email, the password, etc., etc. Oh, this is nice. And then access token. Cool. Okay, so I think this is pretty much mission accomplished. It's not perfect, but we were able to add authentication to the application. Let's also, before we call it a day, let's also add a logout. And we're just gonna put it in the header. I'm sorry, you were about to say something? Oh, okay. I thought you were about to say something. You can't hide. Okay, so I'm
gonna add like a write component to this. I think it was this. Write component by default, the value is null. That way we don't have to provide a value everywhere. Oh lord. Actually no, I think I want to switch this to use the app page component that we created. That way, where you're using that, you can get.
You did that for me?
Yeah.
Oh, you finally did something.
Hard.
So nice of you to.
Working hard, I was there at the right time or the right place at the right time.
Oh, Lord have mercy.
Actually, speaking of, let me see if that thing I was speaking of earlier works.
What are you talking about? Oh.
It does. Oh, I lied.
You just deleted the whole thing. What's happening? What's going
on?
Yeah. Okay, so I'll also add a write component. Brain fart and tongue fart. That's what I was talking about, right? So even though like there is no like data member anywhere that exists called write component, because I typed it previously, it knows that, oh, this is probably what you want, and so I'm gonna put that here. And then write component equals write component. Default value is null. Again, that way it doesn't force us to put it every time. And then write component, I'm just gonna make this a button, like Joe Button. I don't know why I said that. But...
Boo. Boo. I love like on Twitter where like Joe Budden will like write a tweet and somebody in his comments will be like, "Why aren't you running the country right now?" Like,
hey, what? I don't get that.
His name is Budden, but it looks like Biden. You're like,
oh,
yeah.
That's super weird. Twitter is so weird.
Like, where's my stimulus check? Under his comments. It's hilarious.
Oh, have mercy. Okay. And then I'm gonna have a press listener on logout press. I'll call it, and then we'll pass it here on logout press. And then we'll go to the container in here. So as you can see, like the way the flow is kind of working, all callbacks and data is defined in containers and passed into pages through props. And so that way it makes it very easy to debug, because like if there's a styling issue, you know, there's only one place or one folder to find where the problem is. It'll just be the pages, or maybe the components folder, or sometimes maybe even the widgets, although it's hardly ever the case. But if it's like a logical error, you know, something, you know, it's only going to be in the containers. And whenever I'm working on a Redux application, he also separate that into its own semantic unit, and it just makes debugging larger as applications scale. It makes debugging a whole lot easier. But okay, on logout press, so I'm going to use the auth service, that logout, and that should be that. It should automatically, that callback should automatically be triggered. And it should automatically log the user out. Let me just save in all these pages. What other page did I edit? What's the command for save all? Command Option S. There we go.
Oh, I didn't know about that.
Oh yeah. And then if we press logout, we're back to logged out. And I'm just gonna cheat it, well, not cheating, but I'm just going to change the code a bit to specifically test login. So now that we've already created a user, I'll go back to the login container, and rather than call the create user function, I'm going to call the sign in with email and password function. And I hope I can remember the password I used. So the email was john@mail.com, and I think it was 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8. Submit, and we're logged in. And we're logged out. Awesome. It worked. We finally did something right. But yeah, thank you so much for joining me for episode 2 of Pair Programming. It's been great. We had a great conversation. I appreciate the time. I appreciate, you know, you looking out, helping me out in this venture of mine. Thank you so much. Before we leave, you want to give a parting message, you know, tell people where they can find you online, social, all that kind of stuff. And, you know, any words of wisdom?
So my Instagram is ZAYAHDUNC. I'm sure Toast will probably like put it across the screen or something. But parting words.
No pressure.
Yeah, right. Don't give up is very easy to say. You know,
just do it. You can do it.
The old Fantastic Four movie, and it was like the thing. He just like came on the camera. He was like, "Don't do drugs." Like,
I think I remember that.
Don't do drugs. Let me think. All right, if you have a passion, go for it.
Nice and simple, short and sweet. Thank you so much, Isaiah. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Take it easy, my man.
All right, thank you so much, Coach.